Mabel the Lovelorn Dwarf, Chapter 4. I wished last night had never happened. I headed downstairs for breakfast, rubbing my head and leaning on the railing as I went. Those fellows who had insulted me were idiots. I shouldn't have cared what they said. I shouldn't have let them ruin my victory party. I should have been drinking to celebrate, not because I felt sorry for myself. Won't do that again, ever, for any reason, actually. All the ale explained my thumping headache, but Mam was alive. I'd been up all night thinking about her, why she'd left me. Even the most reasonable explanation I could think of made my stomach turn. Mikey met me at the bottom of the stairs. I guess I don't need to ask how you're doing this morning. I would have told him not to yell, but I hurt too much. He chuckled and put an arm around me. Some toast and tea will help settle you. Come on. I hope so. I shuffled to the kitchen, and Mikey set a small breakfast in front of me. He sat next to me with his own breakfast. My brothers and Da were making too much noise. Did they have to chew so loud? After I'd had a sip of the strong tea, thick like syrup, which did slow the roiling in my stomach, Mikey placed a parchment on the table. What's that? I asked, around a mouthful of toast slathered in butter. This, my dear little sister, is your training schedule. The Gilliam Games are coming up in a few months from now. We have a lot of work to do before then. You've been busy. I squinted through the pain of speaking and sipped more tea. You've already entered me into the Gilliam Games? I'll be picking up an application today at lunch. Training will be hard, and you'll need to put in a lot of hours between now and then. But I believe in you. Your composure last night after all the shenanigans Ricky threw at you was incredible. That composure alone will qualify you for regionals. Your focus, too, was amazing. Whatever you did last night, I've never seen you so focused. Keep that up in training. Focus, composure, and technique. I'm telling you, Mabel, you're a natural. You will have no problems getting through to regionals. My focus? Did he mean what I imagined, winning Aramis's heart? I'd love to do that in training more, but best not to tell him that's what I was doing. Somehow, I didn't think he'd appreciate it if he knew I'd let myself daydream while I threw. But, Mikey, I'm so new at this. Shouldn't we wait a while, maybe a year or two, before entering me in anything? Hardly. The Dwarf Games are coming up in a year. Now is the perfect time for you. As of today, I am increasing your training. From now on, no more trips to the prospector after work. I want you to come home for training. As you can see from the schedule, I've mapped out your expected progress. With the extra hours, you'll peak at exactly the right time to succeed at the Gilliam Games. Once you qualify for regionals in Mitcham, I'll revisit your training schedule so you can succeed and qualify for the Dwarf Games. Mikey patted me on the back and folded up the parchment. Have yourself a good day, and I'll see you out back right after work. Mikey, Dad said, a warning edge in his voice. Dad, she'll be fine. To me, he said, tonight we start with moving objects. I'm sorry, did you say moving objects? I'd forgotten about those. Of course, anyone can master throwing axes at a stationary post. This was insane. I couldn't do that. Yeah, but I haven't even mastered that yet. Shouldn't we wait? Mikey leaned in and patted me on the shoulder. You are a champion. Trust me, he said softly. By mid-morning, my headache had mostly disappeared, and my stomach had settled. The more I thought about competing in the Gilliam Games, in regionals, and even the Dwarf Games, the more I wanted it. I wanted to see more than just the Gilliam mines. Competing in axe throwing would allow me to do that. I wanted the crowds cheering for me like they had at the Bearded Prospector. I wanted to be an athlete. I wanted to be a champion. I wanted to compete. I loved the pressure and excitement of it all, with everyone watching, judging my performance. Sure, I was nervous during the contest at the tavern, but the challenge was exhilarating. I imagined Aramis watching me compete, admiring my throwing skills. Do you think I can do well enough to qualify for the Dwarf Games? I asked him. You'll help me train, won't you? And then it occurred to me, competing in the Dwarf Games would be incredible, but it would be even more amazing if it was decided that a movie should be made of my axe throwing career. Me, the only female axe thrower in Gilliam. Radier might be the one to record it. If that happened, I could actually see how movies were made, not just read about it. I bet the moment we step into the prospector, you're going to have several blokes lined up to challenge you to a contest, Philip said, breaking into my thoughts of making axe throwing and moving history. I had to refocus on the tedium of scratching at the stone wall of the stope. Thanks for the vote of confidence, but I won't be going to the prospector today. Did you get a date? Emma asked, a sparkle in her eye. Who is it? A mountain dweller, I hope. Don't settle for anyone less. No offense, Philip, he grunted. None taken. I wish, and I almost did. It would get everyone off my back, and I wouldn't feel so horrible for not having any male interest. And maybe it might even be nice to have a date. On the other hand, I didn't want dating to interfere with my axe-throwing glory. No, Mikey has entered me into the Gilliam Games and stepped up my training. I have to practice right after work. Emma stopped scraping the rock and put her hands on her hips. Mabel, how do you expect to find a mate if you don't come to the prospector with us? All she needed to do was shake her finger at me to make the scolding complete. Didn't she think I was being asked the same questions at home? I didn't need my best friend berating me. I just wanted to enjoy mining and axe throwing for a bit without this constant need for a mate hanging over me. This is just temporary. I'm sure once I start improving, Mikey will ease up on the training schedule. Maybe if I was good enough to get to the dwarf games, Aramis would hear about me from some of his dwarf friends, and he would come and watch me compete. Then I wouldn't have to imagine him. He would see me and fall in love with me and be in my life for real. I had a lot of work to do to get to the dwarf games. I was packed up and ready to leave I was packed up and ready to leave the mines before the shift-ending horn had finished sounding. I'd already proven I was part of mining tradition by going to the bearded prospector after work and sharing the story of finding my first emerald. Now I had the opportunity to be a part of another incredible dwarven tradition, competing in the dwarf games. I hurried home, Aramis at my side the whole way, listening to me prattle on about how only the best dwarfs competed, how winning even in Gilliam brought fame. Winning the dwarf games, simply competing in the dwarf games, would make me a legend. Everyone knew the names of those competing in every discipline. My stomach flipped. If I was famous, Mam might hear about me. If Mam heard about me, maybe I'd get to meet her, or at least hear from her, and find out why she left me. If you're enjoying the adventures of Mabel Goldenaxe, don't forget to subscribe below. If you're enjoying the adventures of Mabel Goldenaxe, don't forget to subscribe below.